The grand and contrasting landscapes of Hyrule in The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild are littered with a myriad of statues. Statues of whose origins we know of, and those of whose we know not. Although intriguing in their own right, and for their own unique reasons, that I have no doubt. But I can't help but shake away this uneasy feeling that something is missing within these lands. As if something memorable has been plucked clean out of history itself, without a trace. What could it be? You may have already guessed it. That's right, the enigmatic Gossip Stones. Gossip Stones have been part of the Zelda universe for quite some time now. Their first appearance was in Ocarina of Time and have since been seen in a handful of other Zelda games such as Majora's Mask, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, and Skyward Sword, as well as a few cameos in some third-party games. The ones we will be focusing on are the canon appearances within the mainline series. There are 18 games in the entire Zelda series that occupy a place on the official timeline, and yet Gossip Stones only make an appearance in 5 of those games. Technically 6, but I will delve further into those details a little bit later into the video. Such a low number strikes me as a little odd, given how abundant and quirky these stones are in their respective games. You would think Nintendo would use them much more often as sort of a series staple, and yet their numbers dwindle. Could there be an explanation for this? Is there some sort of clue or reason for their absence in the majority of the series? Perhaps an unrecognized pattern has yet to be brought into the light. Possibly. Well, I believe that today we just might have the answers that we crave. Before we dive into the tinfoil hat theories of which there is no return, let us revitalize our knowledge on what Gossip Stones actually are. Their appearance is slightly altered from game to game, but their core purposes and existences remains unchanged, which is seemingly to assist the hero of that era. All Gossip Stones, regardless of their era, share a similarity with one another that would be their most defining feature, a large singular eye carving. We know that they are anything but ordinary, as they harbor mystical properties such as telepathy, foresight, speech, and chronometry, which means they have the ability to tell time down to the exact second. Pretty creepy, if you ask me. However, one of their defining traits is possibly the most mysterious and unsettling of them all. One trait that ignited my passion for digging deeper into their history. Their sentience. Most people would probably just assume that these stones were created to carry pre-recorded messages or simply to absorb information from their immediate surroundings and relay that information back to the hero once interacted with by him. If we looked at all instances of gossip stones doing their thing, we'd come to find that this couldn't be further from the truth. Not only are gossip stones capable of fully understanding and formulating their own responses to direct back at Link, they are sometimes seen running their own mini-games, as seen in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, and surprisingly enough, they can also run their own shops like the Moonlight Merchant in Skyward Sword. Something else is at play here. These stones aren't simply just any old stones. It makes you wonder if there's an actual person somewhere in there. Don't let it fool you. They have no will of their own. That much I am sure of.
Are you serious? This is torture. You're torturing me and everyone else watching. Wait.
All gossip stones are simply acting upon the single will of another. Who that will belongs to, I think today we just might have an answer to that question. But before we head down that path, there's one more detail about gossip stones that I'm certain should help us even more in finding out just who or what created these statues. In Skyward Sword, Gorko the Goron, a fellow gentleman in the pursuit of knowledge such as ourselves, gives us a tidbit of information on how these stones operate when they come into contact with citizens of the realm other than the hero. He states that the stones speak a strange language, which is odd since we are able to understand them crystal clear. We know that they speak to Link telepathically, but what if they only speak to Link telepathically and nobody else? What if we are the only ones who can understand them because we are the only ones who were meant to understand them?
Don't let your kids watch it!
It sounds as if the statues do actually audibly speak out loud when others attempt to interact with them, but in an indecipherable manner. Could they be speaking in ancient Hylian? Or perhaps they simply just spout gibberish. Either way, this could be a nice clue in figuring out what makes these gossip stones tick. Now that we have properly equipped ourselves with the necessary knowledge to hopefully take on this challenge and get to the bottom of it, let's begin by taking a closer look at the official timeline and the games in which gossip stones do appear. We start off our journey hitting the ground running right away with Skyward Sword. This is arguably the most significant game in the entire series for many reasons, but what we're here for today is the fact that Skyward Sword gives us a critically important clue, and that clue is a very lengthy glimpse at prehistory itself. On the surface, we can discover gossip stones in certain locations by playing the goddess harp, which immediately tells us that a civilization or individual from before recorded history is responsible for the existence of gossip stones. If we revisit our friendly neighborhood Goron archaeologist after obtaining the goddess harp, he drops a potentially pretty huge lore bomb on us. He says that within some ancient tomes he's found, it states that Hylia herself is responsible for the creation of goddess walls, and their sole purpose is to aid the hero on his journey by providing him with what he desires, which is interesting, because gossip stones also reward Link with what he desires, through means such as items, as well as useful knowledge. Gorko also states that both goddess walls and gossip stones respond to beautiful tunes. These two very separate creations seem to behave very similarly for just only one of them being created by Hylia. If you ask me, I would say without a doubt that Hylia is responsible for the existence of goddess walls and gossip stones. If Gorko is in search for both the walls and the stones at the same time, then the ancient tomes he studied must have referenced them both either in the same book, or maybe even on the same page. Blessed butterflies flock around both the walls and the stones, suggesting that gossip stones are just as much of a holy relic as Hylia's goddess walls. For the sake of the rest of this video, let's just go out on a limb here and assume that Hylia had a hand in creating gossip stones as well. I mean, it's hard not to based on what the game is giving us to work with. Now that we have an idea on who made gossip stones, our objective shifts, and now we must figure out why they have seemingly disappeared in Breath of the Wild. A Sheikah clan symbol is featured prominently on this iteration of Gossip Stone. Come to think of it, if Hylia created the Gossip Stones, then why would there be a Sheikah symbol on it? Is there a reason for this? Well, I actually do think that there is a reason for this, because if we brush up on what the Sheikah symbol really is and what it means, we can uncover something quite significant. Looking at the symbol, we have an eye with a teardrop. Zelda Encyclopedia tells us that the eye is open wide in order to seek the truth, while the teardrop represents the willingness of the tribe to go to any lengths to achieve a goal. The crest is capable of warding off evil, and it is tradition that they tattoo the symbol on themselves to honor their ancestors. If the crest wards off evil, then that's a good enough reason to place one on a gossip stone, but if we inspect the wording, the willingness of the tribe to go to any lengths to achieve a goal, then something starts to sound a little strange. It almost sounds like the wording here is someone describing the tribe, not the tribe describing itself. The Sheikah were personally chosen by the goddess Hylia herself to be her guardians, so they must have demonstrated a magnificent feat of dedication to her in order to be chosen among everyone else. Surely the pursuit of the truth alone wasn't enough to win her favor. They must have done something else, something drastic, possibly even devastating to their own tribe in order to catch her attention. Could this have been the willingness of the tribe that was referenced? If so, then perhaps the Sheikah were given their clan crest by Hylia as a mark of acceptance for their display of unparalleled devotion. It would explain why Gossip Stones, Hylia's creation, would have a Sheikah crest on it. Or maybe the great lengths the Sheikah went through to win the goddess's favor was to consent to having their souls harvested and embedded within her newly created Gossip Stones in order to give them their eerie sentience and ensure that only the hero would be allowed to hear what wisdom they might have to share. Pretty deep stuff to think about, but unfortunately, it still doesn't explain their absence in the other games. Let's keep moving, shall we? Next up in the timeline is Ocarina of Time. The appearance of their engraving this time around is based on the Mask of Truth. Wearing said mask when interacting with them is the method required in order to hear their wisdom. Only then will the stones let you in on the latest, juiciest gossip. Otherwise, their alternative function this time around is to tell you the current time by striking them. Why are they suddenly telling us what time it is? What's the purpose of it? I mean, I guess it would be kind of handy for the citizens of Hyrule. One guess is that the time-telling function was introduced by the royal family's engineers as a method of diversion, a way for the stones to interact with the general populace without arousing any suspicion. This simple guess could potentially turn into a fact. As we examine above the gates of Hyrule Castle, there lies a bird statue, an inanimate object very similar to Gossip Stones. And yet when you examine this bird statue, for some reason it also tells you the time, an exact copy of the Gossip Stone's function. Now, why would a piece of property belonging to the royal family tell the time in an exactly identical function and manner as a Gossip Stone? Anyway, thanks to our pal Gorko, we now know that Gossip Stones supposedly speak an unknown language, or possibly even gibberish when heard by people other than the hero, but in Ocarina of Time, even the hero can't hear the secrets of these stones without the assistance of the Mask of Truth. Could there be evidence here that suggests the Gossip Stones in Hyrule require some sort of activation mechanism such as the Goddess Harp and the Mask of Truth in order for their knowledge to be unlocked? Another guess would simply be the fact that the game itself is heavily themed on time-based mechanics. The developers probably thought it would be cool to add a way for Link to know what time it is to help convey the sense of a living, breathing world. Back when Ocarina of Time first came out, the concept of a day and night cycle in a video game alone was still really new and awesome to experience, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was the actual reason why only the Gossip Stones in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask tell you the time. Speaking of Majora's Mask, so, the Gossip Stones in Majora's Mask are almost identical to the ones in Ocarina of Time, except for one detail. Instead of telling you the current time, they now tell you how much time you have left until you die.
Oh, that's bad. You're bad.
Thanks a lot. That's super helpful. Moving things along. Wind Waker. Although it's not officially home to some of our lovably ominous rocks, it does have a fragment of one. The Pirate's Charm. This little dude was that 6th game technicality I was referring to earlier in the video. Although Wind Waker sadly doesn't have any Gossip Stones in statue form, please try to contain your tears, for not all is lost because it does have one in walkie-talkie form. Yep, its primary function is the ability to allow two-way communication from one person to another. Interestingly, you can also watch over someone no matter where they are if they happen to have the Pirate's Charm on them. So pretty much the Pirate's Charm is exactly like FaceTime except for Hylians or something. Later on in the game, King Daphne's Nohance in Hyrule calls you up and lets you in on a secret. The Pirate's Charm is something he made himself, and it turns out that it's actually an advanced form of Gossip Stone. He also implies that Gossip Stones are ancient history, implying that there hasn't been any new iterations of them since Ocarina of Time, so those stones were most likely used as the catalysts in the creation of the Pirate's Charm. We finally have someone else who is responsible for the existence of another form of Gossip Stone. But is this enough to connect the dots? Not quite, and unfortunately from here onwards, things start to get a lot more confusing with the direct sequel. Phantom Hourglass is up, and I already regret it. Oh boy, where do I even begin? Well, for some reason, the Gossip Stones this time have a completely different appearance, as they now look like a one-eyed Wario.
Who's that Pokemon?
Have a rotten day!
I seriously have no clue why they look like this, not even a crumb of evidence in the entire game that could explain their new absurd look. Don't get me wrong, that's one incredible mustache, I'm not even gonna lie. But I'm trying to put together a coherent theory here. Come on, Nintendo, settle down, guys. If we can just compose ourselves and move past their new visuals, we can begin discussing their new behaviors. This game gives Gossip Stones a bit more of a personality, I guess you could call it. They're much more lively and have much more to say as well. You've gotten your regular old-fashioned chatty Cathy gossip stones that'll tell you some useful information like in the previous games. Then you have some that reside in dungeons that tell you how many treasure chests are left on the current floor for a fee of 20 rupees. Finally, you even have some that run their own mini-games, such as the Maze Island Gossip Stone. Interesting new interactions with Gossip Stones this time around, equally so with the next direct sequel. Spirit Tracks revs up its engine as we see Link rolling while simultaneously hating on him, and for good reason too. Rabbit ears? Why are you doing this to me? Come on, man. This is my first video and my first theory. Why did I have to theme my channel on Gossip Stones of all things in this series? Jeez. I am going out on a limb here when I make this connection, but try to bear with me. The reasoning behind this game giving Gossip Stones rabbit ears is because they're, well, you see, there are these rabbits that you that you have to catch in this game and bring them back to a very passionate rabbit aficionado, so that you can frolic with them. Yeah, at least it's a possible explanation for their appearance in this game, unlike Phantom Hourglass, where I had absolutely nothing to work with. Their behavior in Spirit Tracks is identical to Phantom Hourglass, except now you need to wake them up with a couple of high-quality dupes. Yep, that's the end of the line. The timeline, that is. As much as I give Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks a hard time, these two games actually help us immensely in possibly figuring out an interesting bit of additional lore that I wasn't even looking for, but hey, I'll take in any new Zelda lore I can get. Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask all have their Gossip Stones sporting some form of Sheikah symbolism, while the Gossip Stones in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks look totally different. Could the drastic shift in appearances have something to do with geographical location? The stones that have Sheikah symbolism are all located within Hyrule, while Phantom Hourglass does in fact take place on the seas bordering Hyrule's Great Sea and the Wind Waker. Spirit Tracks is in yet another totally different location than Hyrule, as well as the seas bordering Hyrule. It makes sense why the stones can look so different from game to game if Hyrule has a large Sheikah influence, while the other two games and their respective areas have almost zero Sheikah influence. We've come a long way on our learning spree, but it's time we start piecing together the puzzle as to their abrupt disappearance in over half of the timeline. If we draw a path down the timeline along the games in which Gossip Stones do make an appearance, we can uncover a pattern that suggests only the adult timeline has continued the tradition of Gossip Stones. Why has the Downfall timeline and the Child timeline given us games without Gossip Stones? Did something happen in these timelines that caused their absence? Are there clues for us to find that may tell us what could have potentially happened to them? Let's take a deeper look and find out. Starting with Ocarina of Time, we advance forward with Majora's Mask, where we see the last known attendance of Gossip Stones. Majora's Mask takes place only just a few months after Ocarina of Time, and so, of course, there absolutely should be Gossip Stones. The debate on whether or not the events of Majora's Mask takes place in reality or in Link's head or even in an alternate universe supremely sours our search for answers in this game. It's rather difficult to say anything definitive about this game's Gossip Stones, and it's even more difficult to come up with evidence that leads to their eventual departure from this timeline. However, even though Twilight Princess does not officially contain Gossip Stones, I believe we might still be able to solve this if we keep moving along. Twilight Princess is my favorite game in the series, and today it just might be my favorite for a new reason, as it helps us answer our questions on why Gossip Stones stopped appearing in this timeline. As stated before, officially there are no Gossip Stones in this game, but if we make our own observations and keep our eyes peeled while we play it, we just might be able to spot something remarkably similar to a Gossip Stone. The Howling Stones. Visually, these stones, when compared to Gossip Stones, look like long-lost twin brothers, minus the hole in the middle. Howling Stones seem to have been exposed to the elements much more than the ones in the Ocarina of Time. Their surface is covered in an overgrowth of moss and greenery, and the Sheikah crest is featured on these stones, exactly like the way they are on the Gossip Stones. Either someone carved the hole through the eye of the crest, or the wind has eroded these stones with incredible pinpoint accuracy, which leads me to believe that these were simply just hand-carved. My theory is that the Hero of Time, in collaboration with the Sheikah, carved out these stones so that he could make contact with his descendant and pass his swordsmanship knowledge on to him. The Sheikah are known to have premonition abilities, and possibly knew that Ganondorf would return sooner than the world would like him to. He also most likely knew that his return would lead to the descendant of the Hero of Time being cursed into taking the form of a wolf, which started them on the path to creating a way for the Hero of Twilight to receive wisdom from Gossip Stones in a way that only a wolf could, through howling. By carving a hole through the Gossip Stones, this action may have ended their sentience, or, for a lack of a better word, killed them, which might be why they seem so lifeless in Twilight Princess. If there was indeed a soul embedded within these Gossip Stones, then the hole carved through them could have set the soul free and put it to rest. Without a soul magically preserving these stones, time might finally be catching up to them, as now we see signs of rapid decay. For moss and grass to grow upon a surface of a stone, the stones must have been motionless for quite some time, adding credit to the theory that these stones could very well have in fact died. With the stones now vulnerable to the wrath of Mother Nature and their existence dating back tens of thousands of years, it's safe to assume that these stones have just about met their end. Their absence in Four Swords Adventures now makes sense, given that the game takes place hundreds of years after Twilight Princess. Nature has run its course, and our funny little stone companions are sadly no more. When it comes to the Downfall timeline, our final destination, things start to become less and less concrete, as it consists entirely of games that either came out before or is based off of a game that released before Ocarina of Time, which is a big deal since Ocarina of Time was the first game in the series to feature Gossip Stones. I could craft multiple theories about their disappearance in this timeline, as there actually could be signs that might point towards an actual explanation for it in A Link to the Past, but if they never came up with the idea of Gossip Stones until Ocarina of Time, then how could we possibly expect to be able to understand how something that was never meant to exist within this timeline suddenly stopped existing? The truth is that they were simply never there from the start. A Link Between Worlds is a game that takes place a few generations after A Link to the Past and even takes place in the same world. So a game that's based on a game that lacks gossip stones, yeah, it makes sense why there aren't any. Now, Triforce Heroes is an absolute abomination of a game, and the mere utterance of its existence is a cardinal sin. The game Who Shall Not Be Named doesn't even take place in Hyrule, it takes place in the kingdom of Hytopia, where people would rather wear hype beast clothing than be decent human beings, so of course Hylia wouldn't grace the Cretans in that land with her creations. That part of the world is the one place I'm certain even the 3 golden goddesses themselves would admit that they messed up on. Not enough oopsie daisies in the world could tee-hee its way out of that hot mess. Back to business, as you can see, this timeline just ain't it. It all boils down to the fact that the games just weren't made with gossip stones in mind, and that might be why they never appeared in any of them. As much as I want the answer to not be as simple as that, it's probably what it'll end up being, no matter which way I look at it. Our journey comes to a close as we finally reach our goal. Gossip stones, even though their games number few, their spirit stretches far throughout the entire timeline. Please take my theories with a grain of salt, as by writing this script I have gone clinically insane attempting to piece together the literal molecules worth of evidence at my disposal. But I guess I wouldn't be a very good Zelda theorist if I wasn't just a little bit off my rocker. Breath of the Wild is a beautiful game, and its beauty would have only been enhanced with the addition of gossip stones. Alas, it was not meant to be. The sequel to Breath of the Wild, on the other hand, now that game has potential. And boy oh boy, do I have some theories cooked up already about this one. I hope you enjoyed this video and found yourself learning some obscure things about the series just the same as I have while making it. If you enjoyed yourself, there's much more to come in the future, so please subscribe and stick around for another onslaught of Zelda lore from Gossip Geist.